What if right this very second, every single person on Earth just disappeared? Imagine you are sitting in your room, reading this, and then suddenly, you are gone. And so is everyone else. The driver in the car outside, the baker making bread, the pilot flying a plane high in the sky, all of them, gone in an instant. What would happen next? The world wouldn't stop, it would just continue on without us. The planet, which has been our home for so long, would suddenly be left to its own devices. What would it do? How would it change? This is not a scary story, it's a journey of imagination. In the first few hours after our disappearance, the world would seem almost normal, just strangely quiet. Cars, trucks, trains, their drivers now gone, would crash in a final chaotic symphony of screeching metal. Most would simply roll to a stop. Airplanes, with their autopilots engaged, might continue flying for a while, circling endlessly until they run out of fuel. They would then fall from the sky, returning to the Earth in remote fields, oceans, or the empty cities we left behind. Inside our homes, televisions would still be on, lights would still be burning, air conditioners would still be humming. But our global machine needs constant attention. The first major systems to fail would be the power grids. Coal power plants, natural gas plants would start shutting down without fuel or oversight. Within a day or two, vast regions would plunge into darkness. By the end of the first week, the world would belong to the animals. The constant hum of human activity would fade into an unnerving silence, a quiet that would signal a profound shift in power. For millions of pets left behind, these first few days would be a time of confusion and desperation. The routines that structured their lives, gone. Dogs would be trapped inside without food or water. Cats would be trapped inside without food or water. Their world shrunk to a prison of waiting. But the resourceful and the lucky would find a way out. A dog might push through a screen door, a cat might slip through an open window. Once outside, they would enter a brand new world, one without masters but filled with new dangers. For farm animals, the situation would be just as dire. Chickens, pigs, and cows kept in enclosures were completely dependent on automated systems. Without us, feeding machines would stop and troughs would run dry. Most would perish within the week. However, some would escape through a broken fence or a gate left ajar, stumbling into a bewildering freedom. Meanwhile, wild animals would quickly notice our absence. Raccoons, foxes, deer, and coyotes would grow bolder. No longer held back by our presence, they would venture from forests into our deserted backyards and streets, reclaiming territory we had taken from them. In zoos, enclosures would fail without maintenance. A power outage could disable an electric fence. For some, this meant freedom. But for an animal released into an alien climate, it was a death sentence, a tragedy for the escapee, and a new threat to the local ecosystem. After 1 month, the world would start to look noticeably untended. The perfectly manicured lawns of suburbia would be the first to show change. Dandelions and weeds would push through cracks in the sidewalks. After the first big rainstorm, leaves and trash would clog storm drains. Small pools would become breeding grounds for mosquitoes. Inside our buildings, a quiet invasion would be underway. Pipes in colder climates would freeze and burst. Moisture would invite mold and mildew. Small animals and insects would enter through broken windows or vents and build nests in closets. Our homes would slowly become shelters for new residents. The air and water would also begin to clear. Aquatic life would slowly begin to recover. Not a complete cleansing, but dramatic initial change. After a full year without us, nature's reclamation would be impossible to ignore. Vines would climb the walls of houses and cover street signs. Tree roots would push into asphalt and concrete, widening cracks. Roads and parking lots would become mosaics of gray and green. A few missing shingles would invite water, rot, and collapsing roofs. The survivors and their offspring would be wilder and tougher, packs of feral dogs competing with coyotes and foxes. Without engineers to maintain them, seawalls and jetties would crumble. Drained wetlands would begin to reflood, returning habitat to fish, birds, and amphibians. Large herbivores would expand into abandoned cities. Deer, boar, even bison in places once dominated by people. Predators would return and birds would rebound. Silent cities echoing with birdsong. Our plastic would persist, looking nearly brand new amid the green. So, a mere decade after our departure, the world we left behind wouldn't just be quiet, it would be actively crumbling. The relentless forces of nature, once held at bay by our constant maintenance, would begin their slow, methodical reclamation. Our wooden houses would be the first to surrender, entering a serious state of decay. Without our protection, voracious termites and fungus would feast on their frames. Roofs would cave, allowing rain and snow to pour directly into the structures, accelerating the collapse from within, and turning our homes into waterlogged, hollowed-out shells. A green tide would wash over everything. Young trees would sprout from forgotten foundations, their powerful roots cracking the very concrete we thought was permanent. Backyards, parks, and empty lots would merge, becoming the first wave of a new, untamed wilderness. Even our steel and concrete giants would show their vulnerability. Water, seeping into tiny cracks and freezing, would fracture their facades. Rust would bleed from exposed rebar and windows would shatter. Bridges, starved of maintenance, would become dangerously fragile, their steel bones slowly corroding away. The animal kingdom would be rewilded. Herds would graze on former highways, while predators like bears and cougars reclaimed the urban edges. Amidst the decay, our most stubborn legacy would remain: plastic. While paper and cloth rotted away, our synthetic creations would persist. Asphalt roads would heave and fracture as our cities were slowly, inexorably buried under a blanket of green. After 100 years, a person from our time would scarcely recognize the world. Volunteer forests would be mature, with trees reaching 50 to 60 feet into the sky. Streets would be rivers and suburbs swallowed. Stone and concrete foundations remain like ancient ruins. Corroded steel would collapse, bridges, dams, and skyscrapers failing after centuries. Their fallen skeletons would create new rapids and waterfalls, reshaping rivers. Wild species would return to numbers unseen since before the Industrial Revolution: bison, tigers in jungles, whales in quiet seas. But radioactive sites and plastic pollution would leave scars, zones where life struggles. Microplastics would persist in soils and bodies of animals. The climate would slowly stabilize, but the scars of our era would remain visible for centuries. Thousands of years into the future, almost all visible traces of our civilization would be gone. Forests would rise and fall many times, glaciers and tectonics would reshape the land. Ruins would be buried under layers of soil and sediment, a thin, curious layer in the geological record. Dams would burst and rivers would return to ancient courses. A few durable monuments might survive, weathered and softened by millennia. Glass and plastics would remain as odd minerals and sediments. The biological reshuffle we caused would be the most enduring: earthworms, starlings, and mixed ecosystems. Perhaps the faint expanding bubble of radio waves from our broadcasts would be the last trace of us to reach the stars. We loved, built, and dreamed on a small blue planet. The Earth would continue, beautiful and indifferent. Imagining a world without people is not about wishing for our demise. It's about holding up a mirror to ourselves and our civilization. This thought experiment forces us to confront the sheer scale of our impact. From the smallest manicured lawn to the mightiest diverted rivers, we see a world shaped by our constant desire to control, manage, and suppress the wild. But it also reveals the planet's deep, persistent resilience. Without our constant intervention, nature's script takes over. Forests would regrow, creeping back into our concrete canyons. Rivers, freed from their channels, will carve new paths. We'd see new animal behaviors emerge as they adapt to our abandoned world. Predators roaming city streets and birds nesting in the skeletons of skyscrapers. Life, in all its forms, simply wants to thrive. Yet our departure would not be a clean slate. Dangerous legacies would remain, silent and deadly. The slow decay of nuclear waste, the microplastics infiltrating every ecosystem, the contaminated groundwater seeping through the earth. These are our ghosts, poisons that would haunt the planet for millennia, a stark reminder that some of our actions have consequences that far outlive us. This vision of our absence isn't a forecast of doom, but a powerful call to action. It pushes us to be better ancestors. It proves that much of the damage we have inflicted is not permanent, that the earth can heal if we give it space. Imagining our absence inspires us to design more gently, restore what's broken, and work with the planet's strength, not against it. We are not separate from nature. We are a powerful, clever, and disruptive part. Let's choose to be better stewards.